So you need some bench help or stashes for next week. Here's 3 tight ends you should stash going into week 10 before the games on Sunday. The first guy's Logan Thomas. I talk a lot about him on this channel, but Thomas, he was a disappointment last week versus the Giants with only 5.5 fantasy points. This week I don't like him at all versus Detroit, so I'm going to stay away from him. But the next 2 weeks is where I like Thomas. Again, in week 11 he's got Cincinnati, and in week 12 in Dallas on Thanksgiving. So Logan Thomas, he got dropped in a few leagues over the past week. His percentage of ownership went down 4, and now he's available in 66% of leagues. I know Alex Smith is in there. That's a reason I'm not in love with Thomas, but he's still a serviceable tight end, I think. And with the 2 good matchups coming up in week 11 and 12, this is looking ahead as a decent bench stash. So Logan Thomas, he's out there in many leagues, like I said. Stash him if you got the room. The second guy is Irv Smith Jr. He was on my waiver wire video. If you need some help with that, or looking for guys out there, or thinking about picking them up, whatever the deal is, go check that out. But anyway, Irv Smith Jr. last week, 2 catches, 10 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's getting more of a role in this Viking offense. And he was at the goal line twice with those touchdowns. And all the defenses, they're not worried about Irv Smith. They're focused on Jefferson Thielen and the monster Dalvin Cook, who's having one hell of a season. But anyway, Irv Smith, he's available in 90% of leagues still, even after his 2 touchdown performance, which is kind of fluky. But this guy, he's going to play more of a role in the offense. 3 out of his last 4 fantasy games, he's had double-digit fantasy points now, is Irv Smith Jr. In week 5 versus Seattle, 4 catches, 64 yards. Week 6, 4 catches, 55 yards, and a 2-point conversion. And then week 7, he had the bye. Week 8, a dud, 1 catch for 16 yards. And then versus Detroit, like I said, on 4 targets, 2 catches, 10 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So Irv Smith, he's out there in a bunch of leagues. He's a guy I have a sleeper as well that you could start this week. So try to stash him or even start him, is Irv Smith Jr. The third and final guy is Gerald Everett. He's of the Los Angeles Rams. He's in the same category for me as Irv Smith Jr. He was on my Sleepers tight end ads video. Go check that out. Anyway, Gerald Everett, in his last 2 out of 3 games, he's got double-digit fantasy points as well. He's turning into a main target there with Goff. Tyler Higbee, he just hasn't shown up or proved much this season, except in week 2 with a huge game versus the Philadelphia Eagles with 3 touchdowns. But Gerald Everett, he's a go-to guy. He was a high draft pick a few years ago with the Rams. And I like his matchup this week and next week in 2 games where you know they're going to have to try to score a lot, is the Rams, to win versus this week in Seattle. At home versus Seattle. And then next week in Tampa Bay. And Everett, he's getting you points nowadays, 8 to 12 points. He's been giving you the last 3 out of 4 weeks, so he's not a bad guy to stash or even start this week. So that's 3 tight ends I'm looking to stash before the games heading into week 10.